The role of the ship, where it's sort of becoming, in a way, like the Mass Effect, like the hub for all your characters and things like that. Will you also be looking for, like, will people be picking up quests from characters on the ship?
All of your companion characters have all of their own content. So there are quests to be had, there are conversations to be had, romances and friendships and things building and all sorts of craziness stuff going on there. It's also, you know, we made sure to put your crafting table and everything on there, so you've got a reason to come back. You've got storage there, you've got all sorts of cool stuff going on your ship. That's sort of your central command.
You know, a Republic player versus, you know, for the Empire. How much crossover in terms of seeing the other side of the story will there be, or is it sort of a thing where you're going to have to roll a character on both sides to fully get the full experience?
There is zero repeated content between the two sides. You will never have the same quest or the same conversation from one side to the other. The Sith Lord will not call the Jedi up and say, hey, I'd like you to go kill some Republic guys for me. Right. You will get sort of the other side of many of the stories. Really playing through both sides is going to give you a clearer picture of what's actually happening, because of course everyone comes from a different perspective. The 8 classes, of course, all have their own content as well. If you really want to understand what's happening in the Old Republic and get the complete picture, right. And it lends a really interesting dynamic to the game.
Because certain things are optional and maybe you may make a choice and miss out on this. Like, trying to get a cohesive storyline through that, is it, you know, the challenge of trying to pull that off?
A lot of my job is to look at sort of the whole picture and to bring the writers together in various times too and say, hey, you're developing this plot, this is a really interesting piece. This actually functions really well with what's happening with the Jedi Consular plot over here. So let's actually take this over here, let's make sure these are the same people, let's spread these things around and make it feel like a cohesive whole. One of the places that we always have to have the giant list is what might have happened. Because anything that might have happened, but definitely happen, we have to sort of walk carefully around in the other plots. My whole dream for this was a BioWare RPG that went forever. That's why I came to do this project. It's always what I've wanted. I've always wanted my character that I got to, you know, play all of the adventures all the way through. Yeah. There are several chapters in the release piece, and a chapter end is a great place to, one, sort of stop and take in everything that's happened, see what's going on. You know, the thing you've played through is probably bigger than Mass Effect already. And also can be a really good place to say, hey, maybe I want to go check out another story. Right, I've finished Chapter 1 Smuggler, maybe I want to go see Chapter 1 Jedi Knight, or Chapter 1 Bounty Hunter and get a very different picture. It's also a great place to give rewards, pull things in, sort of separate you out of the pack, say, hey, like, you've now finished Chapter 1, like, that's a big, big milestone.
You hit level cap of 50 and the chapter ends. Does that mean that there's content for endgame then, or is it more of like, okay, this part of the story has been told and we should sort of picture that as the way to think about it? Okay, now go explore the story through other means, or is there still a continuation of things to do at level cap in regards to that?
So yeah, so that would be the end of Chapter 3, the end of your class story as opposed to an actual level cap. Cool. But all the stuff at the end of your story leads you into the end game, which is also, of course, shockingly story-based, and has a whole bunch of content about the conflicts and the things that are going forward. And all of the 8 classes sort of come together into the conflict very naturally and are led to say, like, all right, now here's what we're all doing. Everybody go fight.
Right. Is there an aspect of the storytelling that you're particularly excited about?
The ability to do the flashpoints. They're so heavily crafted. There's so much amazing enjoyment to do things that are as good or better and more sort of customized than anything we've ever done in a single player game. But with 4 people playing together, when you play multiplayer storytelling and you play the multiplayer dialogue and you guys are arguing about what to say and you're trying to be all polite and your buddy is just being completely ridiculous, when the smuggler is hitting on your quest giver and you're like, did he really say, wait, did he just leave with her? Even the content that you're sharing has different lines that show up for different characters. Right. So you're looking at your choices and you're like, oh, I'm going to pick this. And then your buddy's going to pick something that clearly was not in your choice. And it's the closest we've come to sort of the dream, which was always recreating the guys sitting around on the table.
I was going to say, it sounds very much like the D&D, like the total freedom to choose.
Absolutely, and you come down to the vote nodes, right? And those are super fun times. When you come down to the vote nodes, everybody rolls in, and then, so the multiplayer dialogue system works on a role-based system. Yeah, you roll and you get to see who talks. Wow. But then everything, when there's a big dark side, light side choice, comes down to an A or B, and all the rolls of all the people who vote on one side are added up. but it is still possible for 3 guys to roll one way badly, one guy to roll the other way well, and take it.
Wow.
And those are amazing moments as everybody's like, I can't believe you know, that when you do those vote nodes, you get the light side or dark side points that you picked, not what happened.
Cool.
Have to be afraid to group with other people.
Right.
You get to enjoy the groaning and the yelling at each other and the arguing without actually ever having to worry about the impact here.
So in terms of trade and economy, is there sort of a base system set up in regards to like an auction house?
We are doing an auction house system. We haven't announced sort of how it works. The one thing I will say is having a quasi-sci-fi future setting helps us in a ton of ways. The same way that I can call my ship. I have a holocommunicator. I have a phone, right? It's not fantasy.
Yeah.
I can, I can have trade things that reach across the galaxy. I can have systems that very naturally fold into every civilized part of the whole play space, and it makes things like economy and communicating with players a much easier task to do and still make it feel contextual.
And also in terms of the crafting, or is there sort of a cap to your skill, like a certain endpoint, or is it just continually expansion?
Skills definitely will go to a certain point and stop, but your exploration and your ability to discover and create unique stuff that only you, maybe on the entire server, know how to do does not stop.
Light and dark side points, let's say you've played through at a certain point, you've been really pushing towards the dark side, and you get to the end of your, the 3rd chapter or whatever the case may be, and you maybe just you've had some second thoughts and you want to go back and change that. Is there a certain number of mission skill quests that you can do, or is there always the possibility to go back and sort of affect that?
You could be doing missions forever. The one thing that's really important is that although your light side, dark side stuff affects a lot of the stuff that you can do up until there, we make a very, very strong point that when you're going to hit the level cap and you're going to go into the end game, none of the stuff that your light side, dark side stuff would do would ever exclude you from, let's say, joining a raid, something like that. It has to sort of become neutral, different, but neutral by the end game, because we don't ever want anyone to look at you and go, oh, you went gray consular? Totally not okay for this raid.
Can you tease raids at all? I know you're probably not willing to talk about it yet, but is there anything you can even just sort of hint at in regards to what we can look forward to?
They're going to be there. They're going to be all rad and things. It's probably going to be story.
All right. Sounds good. Who shot first?
Han.
Legit.